Chapter 221, Twin Sisters. A wry smile tugged at Long Hoanshan's lips. Such high praise. Looks like I'll have to see for myself just how amazing these kids are. The two teams stood opposite of each other on the stage, having just introduced themselves. Tang Wuolin was astonished to discover that their opponents were all girls. It was his first time greeting a team composed only of girls. During their introduction, Tang Wuolin had been intrigued by the near-identical appearance of Hanyo and Tiana. Although they were clearly twin sisters, their contrasting hair colors made for an odd sight. Standing as the spear point of her team, Hanyo stared at Tang Wuolin with eyes that were as cold as ice and as unyielding as the plum blossom in winter. She had matured quite well, apart from being unripe. Her height barely differed from that of an adult's. The Eastie team seemed tiny in comparison. An unfathomable feeling welled in Hanyo's heart as she stared at the opposing team. Before the match, their academy's president had repeatedly warned them not to look down on their opponents today, but she just couldn't understand how the three kids before her had an identical winning streak as theirs. Their 4 victories almost guaranteed that they had a place in the top 16. Since there were only 8 matches per group, it was nigh impossible for them to not make it into the top 16 now. They're so young though, only 10 years old. Compared to Hanyo's frigid demeanor, Tiana exuded liveliness. She absent-mindedly asked, "Little brother, you're already competing at such a young age?" Tang Wuolin's face couldn't help but twitch at her question. "This a competition? We just came here to gain experience." Despite being disgruntled, Tang Wuolin beamed at her. He couldn't let his opponent notice his displeasure. Tiana said, "How about you guys just concede? It wouldn't look good if we hurt you. People might think we're bullying children." Tang Wuolin's smiling expression stiffened. "She's even advising us to surrender?" Yue couldn't bear it anymore and said in a frosty tone, "The victor hasn't been decided yet. We'll see after this match." The referee began counting down. Hanyo glared at her younger sister before turning to Tang Wuolin and nodding. 3, 2, 1, begin. Thus, the match between the two strongest teams in Group 3 began. Tang Wuolin's first move was no different from the past. He immediately charged ahead, his hands forming subtle signs behind his back as he shot towards Hanyo like lightning. She was right behind Tang Wuolin after seeing the hand signals. His target was Wang Dongqi, however, not Hanyo. In that moment, the students of Sealand Academy revealed the brilliance of their soul rings. Hanyo and Wang Dongqi had 3 soul rings. The former had 2 yellow rings and 1 purple, while the latters were all yellow as for Tiana. She only had 2 yellow soul rings. It's just as we had investigated. They have 2 soul elders and 1 soul grandmaster. Their cultivation is enough to crush us. Having already confronted 3 ring soul masters before, the 3 from class 0 did not fear them. Only after they had fought would they know what their opponents truly amounted to. Hanyo stood her ground in the face of Tang Wuolin's charge. She raised her right hand, her 3 soul rings rising in sync as a thin sleeve of icy light surrounded her body. The arena's temperature dropped as waves of glacial mist rolled off her body and her complexion slowly whitened until it was like snow. On the other hand, Tiana's aura was different. The two were clearly born from the same mother, were of the same age, and most likely twins. Yet not only was Tiana's cultivation lower than her elder sister's, her martial soul was different too. What appeared in her hand was not cold air, but a green ball of light bursting with vitality. What is that? Tang Wuolin was surprised by the sight of these 2 martial souls. He wasn't the same ignorant kid that was newly arrived from Gloridown City anymore. After studying and battling under Wu Zhangkong's guidance, his knowledge had deepened. A single glance was all it took for him to discern that the twins were rarely seen elemental soul masters. Hanyo had the ice element, specifically the ice spirit. On the other hand, Tiana had the wood element. Similarly, it was called wood spirit. However, wood-type martial souls were much rarer than ice types. These 2 sisters should be twins, but their martial souls are so different. What a spectacle. It seems that their hair colors are different due to their martial souls. In box 1, Hanyo and Tiana are twin sisters, but their differences were apparent since the moment they were born. Despite their parents being average commoners without soul power, their children were incredibly gifted. Hanyo has innate full soul power and the ice spirit martial soul. She's the most gifted student we've had in many years. Tiana is a bit less gifted. She only had rank 8 innate soul power. Still, she has the even rarer wood spirit constitution. Furthermore, the sisters have the mental connection of twins. Zhang Senpeng explained the background of his 2 star pupils. Long Hoanshan sighed in appreciation. They really are excellent talents. No wonder Senpeng was so confident in his request. Although the strength of a soul master was directly tied to their soul power, quite often it was the martial soul that was more important. A 3-ring soul master with an ordinary martial soul could never catch up to a 3-ring soul master with a peak level martial soul. The gap was too enormous. These 2 girls were not ordinary by any means. On the competition stage, Hanyo's gaze clashed with Tang Wuolin's. She slowly pressed her right palm forward, sending a rippling wave of misted ice at him, obscuring his vision. He could just barely make out her unmoving figure within the mist. Tiana's first soul ring lit up while a soft green light appeared on the ground. Vines grew from the light in an instant and followed her pointed finger to attack Tang Wuolin. It's bind. Tang Wuolin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was simply impossible for him to not recognize it for what it was. They were both plant-type soul masters, but Tiana's wood spirit was far more powerful than his blue silver grass. Her bind was like an array of vines piercing toward him. Although Tang Wuolin was shaken, he quickly adapted to the situation. His purple soul ring rose from beneath his feet and commanded his own blue silver grass to weave into a protective screen in the air. Tang Wuolin charged ahead, his blue silver grass shield slanted so that it deflected the onslaught of vines. He quickly advancing upon her. Unperturbed, Hanyo activated up her first soul ring. White suddenly dominated Tang Wuolin's vision. A wall of ice formed right before him. Hanyo's timing was impeccable. The wall appeared just as Tang Wuolin was about to remove the screen's protection. He would slam into it an instant later. There was nothing else Tang Wuolin could do. Although his speed was explosive, his control over it couldn't possibly compare with Shi. To the Sealand Academy team's surprise, Tang Wuolin didn't show any intention of slowing down. Rather, he increased his speed. He raised both his arms and lowered his head, crashing straight into the ice wall. Bang! Tang Wuolin completely shattered the ice wall and continued his charge at Hanyo. This guy. Hanyo stared dazedly at the sight. This was the first time she had seen someone break through her ice wall through sheer physical strength. Just what kind of freak is he? Tang Wuolin was just 15 meters away from her. It would take him no more than an instant to reach her. Tiana moved next to her sister, a sweet smile gracing her lips contrasting with her sister's unchanging mask of indifference. Chapter 222, Suppressed and Restrained. A strange energy emanated from their bodies. Tiana's first soul ring lit up as she raised her hand. Vines appeared from beneath the 2 sisters, wrapping around their legs and waist before rapidly dragging them backwards, instantly opening a wide gap between them and Tang Wuolin. Tang Wuolin reacted without thinking. Blue silver grass shot out as he activated bind and charged ahead whilst he himself followed behind. To one side she had reached Wang Dongqi. Rather than retreating, Wang Dongqi stepped forward to welcome him with a newly manifested sword in hand. Silver lightning ran in jagged lines along the length of the sword's violet blade, enshrouding it with an aura of magnificence. A simple slash of her sword sent a bolt of silver lightning at Shi. Shi gathered strength within his legs and forcefully leapt off the ground and into the air, evading the lightning bolt while simultaneously closing the distance between them. Unlike Wu Zhangkong's Skyfrost sword and Yu Xinglin's Stargod sword, Wang Dongqi's Thunderflash sword used soul power to enhance its lightning attribute soul skills rather than the sword itself. She raised her Thunderflash sword high into the air, calling down a storm of lightning snakes around her. This was her second soul skill, chaotic dance of the silver snakes. Wang Dongqi looked down upon Shi. Although he had 2 rings at the young age of 10, she felt he couldn't possibly compare with her. 3 rings was a major milestone for soul masters. It meant that one had reached the middle level of a soul master and often the 3rd soul skill brought a huge power boost. She had decided to use chaotic dance of the silver snakes the moment she had moved against her since this soul skill specialized in restraining agility type soul masters. As an assault type soul master and with her Thunderflash sword's characteristics, she was most effective at restraining agility type soul masters. Not only did lightning have explosive power, its paralysis effect could cripple the speed of an agility-type soul master. The lightning blossomed into a flower of silver light that instantly swallowed Shi. Despite not having much firepower, if chaotic dance of the silver snake struck and paralyzed its opponent, it wouldn't take much effort for Wang Dongqi to finish them off. She had yet to be defeated by an agility-type soul master of the same rank as her. Their defeat was guaranteed the moment she was their opponent. A smile had already settled on her lips. Her team's victory would be assured once she defeated her opponent. She wasn't worried for the Zhou sisters at all. After all, the 2 were the core strength of the team. But at that instant, her smile stiffened. Just as the lightning snakes were about to strike him, Shi's figure wobbled, then duplicated into a multitude of ghostly shadow reflections that flickered forward. Despite the large range of chaotic dance of the silver snakes, it was not without gaps. The erratic bolts of lightning constantly changed positions, creating gaps that Shi took advantage of and, with the sway of his body, he evaded the onslaught of lightning snakes and continued to advance on Wang Dongqi. How can this be? That isn't a soul skill. She hadn't seen Shishi's soul ring light up. She was utterly flabbergasted. She could understand if he had used a soul skill to protect himself, but she couldn't comprehend this situation. Why did his body suddenly become so illusionary? Isn't his martial soul a dagger? How could she have known that what Shishi was using right now was the Tang Sex Ghost Shadow perplexing track? Just as they had researched the EC team had researched them. Familiarity with one's opponent could mean the difference between victory and defeat in battle. Tang Wulin had only let Shishi take on Wang Dongqi after thoroughly understanding her. While Wang Dongqi's lightning certainly was highly effective against agility-type soul masters, that was still dependent on how fast her opponent was. Shishi had displayed spectacular combat skill the first time Tang Wulin had met him, so one could only imagine how strong he was after a year of Wu Zhangkong's guidance and learning the Tang Sex Ghost Shadow perplexing track. Shishi's movements was like the drifting clouds and flowing water when using Ghost Shadow perplexing track. Wang Dongqi couldn't keep track of him, but neither did he keep track of her. In his eyes, she was just a sitting duck. Chaotic dance of the silver snakes had a large range, but was rife with holes. It was worthless in the face of true speed. Wang Dongqi's eyes rolled with panic. When Shishi arrived before her in the blink of an eye, she immediately stabbed her thunderflash sword into the ground and activated her third soul ring. Silver light erupted from her body. Shishi instinctively backflipped, retreating from her and delaying his assault. Just as he had expected, lightning snakes exploded from her sword an instant after he backed away. She had used chaotic dance of the silver snakes once more. It was impossible to dodge in the air. Well, at least at their level. If Shishi hadn't called off his attack, he would have been paralyzed by those snakes. Golden light gathered around Shishi and a second later, he unleashed his light dragon storm, spurring his body to fly backwards. Streaks of silver lightning chased after him but instantly dissipated upon contact with his light dragon storm. Shishi twirled the light dragon dagger in his hand after landing a distance away, taunting Wang Dongqi. Her expression turned unsightly. In order to protect herself just now, she had been forced to use chaotic dance of the silver snakes twice and thunderflash ring once. The consumption of those three soul skills was incomparably larger than Shishi's single soul skill use, and even though her soul power surpassed Shishi's by far, the amount used was nothing to laugh at. Shishi gripped his light dragon dagger and slowly circled Wang Dongqi. Not a single trace of anxiety could be found in his demeanor. Tang Wulin had only given him one mission, to keep Wang Dongqi busy, and if he had an opportunity, defeat her. If he didn't, then keeping her isolated was enough. While he kept her busy here, Tang Wulin found out that his bind was useless. Zhou Tiana pointed at the strands of blue silver grass aiming for her, shooting a group of green lights at it. A strange sensation suddenly washed over Tang Wulin, as if his blue silver grass had been enveloped in a warm embrace that gently stole his control away from him. His sea of blue silver grass went limp in the air and fell onto the ground, too lifeless to attack anymore. This is attribute suppression. Tang Wulin understood what he faced in an instant. It had always been his Golden Dragon King suppressing other soul masters and soul beasts before now. He hadn't expected that a day would come when he would be suppressed instead, even though his Golden Dragon King bloodline had transformed his blue silver grass. In the end, it was still what attributed existence. His bloodline had certainly elevated it to much greater heights, but against the Zhou Tiana who had the Wood Spirit martial soul and a higher soul power than him, being suppressed was inevitable. Even his 1000-year soul ring could do nothing to overturn this suppression. Chapter 223. Douluo Axe. Zhou Tiana smiled sweetly at Tang Wulin, while Zhou Hanyos pointed a finger at him, summoned giant icicles from the ground to form an ice prison around him. Not only did it restrict his movements, it besieged him on all sides. Zhou Hanyos' first soul skill was Ice Wall, her second icicle. Her icicles, however, weren't ordinary. They were powerful variant icicles. There were numerous ways she could use them. The icicles were stronger than the ice wall from before, forcing Tang Wulin back when he charged at them. While he struggled to escape this icy prison, cold air circulated and invaded his body. Although his body was far tougher than an average person, he wasn't immune to the cold and was soon shivering non-stop. Those sisters work so well together. Furthermore, they're clearly still going easy on me. I would be impaled by icicles rather than imprisoned if Zhou Hanyo wasn't. Tang Wulin didn't dare dawdle. He summoned a strand of blue silver grass to lift him out of the prison. Yet at that moment, the icicles lengthened until they intersected and cut off his last escape route. A second control. This is clearly a second controlled soul skill. She is very skillful, and she must have high spiritual power. It can't be any lower than mine. It seems like we can't hold back. This Sealant team is far stronger than we estimated. Go UA. Tang Wulin shouted as golden scales rippled across his right arm, his hand transforming into a dragon claw before he punched the ice before him. Bang! The icicle shattered into fine powder under the crushing effect of his dragon claw. Tang Wulin rushed out of the opening in the next moment. Although his blue silver grass was suppressed by Zhou Tiana, it wasn't absolute. He withdrew the remaining blue silver grass, only letting a single golden strand shoot straight towards Zhou Tiana while he followed closely behind. Hearing Tang Wulin's shout, the Yue finally made her move. Green light enveloped her and she flew over to him, her first soul ring lighting up in the meantime before her fingers twisted to summon a fireball that blazed toward the two sisters. Regardless of whether it be Wood Spirit or Ice Spirit, both were subdued by fire. Elemental type? And she seems to have more than one. Zhou Tiana and Zhou Hanyo were both startled by the sight of the green light around Yue's feet and the fireball arcing toward them. As elemental type soul masters themselves, it was only natural they could recognize another elemental type soul master. They began to tremble at the realization that she could use both wind and fire. Fire and ice were opposites, mutually subduing one another. Zhou Tiana's Wood Spirit, however, was powerless against fire. Only Zhou Hanyo had a chance of fighting back. An icicle half a meter long suddenly appeared and clashed with a fireball. Cobalt and crimson light exploded from their collision. The two were evenly matched. Zhou Tiana was not idle either. A vine flew toward Tang Wulin in an attempt to bind him. Her second soul ring had not dimmed the entire time, continually suppressing Tang Wulin. Her first soul skill was thorny vines and her second was Wood Spirit. Wood Spirit was a support type soul skill that enhanced her other soul skills while suppressing wood attribute soul beasts and martial souls. As long as her opponent's wood attribute did not surpass hers, they would suffer from its effects. Thus, in a sense, Tang Wulin was destined to be suppressed by Zhou Tiana since birth. Zhou Tiana's thorny vines, after being enhanced by her Wood Spirit, had doubled in thickness and were now as wide as a child's arm. Inch-long thorns jutted out, so sharp they were sure to torment anyone caught in it. Tang Wulin recalled his golden dragon claw. Its consumption was simply too great. He also couldn't use his blue silver grass under the effects of the Wood Spirit suppression, so the single strand of golden blue silver grass was his last hope. The strand of grass slammed into the ground in a flash of golden light, its rebounding energy sending Tang Wulin high into the air as he evaded the thorny vines attack. Still want to run, huh? A beautiful smile blossomed on Zhou Tiana's lips as the thorny vine swayed on the ground. She believed that it was impossible for Tang Wulin to evade her attacks in the air, yet at that moment a green light enveloped him, slowing his descent. In the next instant, an icicle flew under his foot. Though this icicle was far smaller than Zhou Hanyo's, it was more than enough to act as a foothold for Tang Wulin. He pushed off the ice step and shot down toward Zhou Hanyo. 7 fireballs blinked into existence around him at the same time, following his descent. Yue did not pause for a single moment. Fireball after fireball flew out without an end in sight. With soul power ranked in the 20s, her fiery assault utterly subdued Zhou Hanyo and gave her no room for distractions. The golden dragon claw appeared once more. Even if he faced another wall of ice or an icicle, Tang Wulin had no intention of dodging. He would charge right through and defeat Zhou Hanyo first. The 3-ringed Zhou Hanyo was their largest threat. Zhou Hanyo frowned as she felt the pressure of the incoming aerial assault. She hadn't expected their 3 10-year-old opponents would be so troublesome. They had researched Tang Wulin, understood his abilities, and formulated tactics to take him down. However, she was shocked that she could actually single-handedly keep Wang Dongqi occupied. In fact, he even seemed to be in the advantageous position. Then there was Gu Yue, the biggest surprise of the trio. In the short time she made her moves, she had used 3 different elements. Although they couldn't tell what her soul skill was, the synergistic effect between those 3 elements was enough to turn the tide. At the very least, it was enough to bring both sides back to balance. They were already well aware of how dangerous Tang Wulin's golden dragon claw was. With him almost upon her and having an entourage of fireballs behind him, Zhou Hanyo knew she would lose if she didn't reveal her cards. Her purple soul ring lit up, instantly transforming her aura as the mist clinging to her body congealed into an icy blue skin. Waves of absolute cold rolled off of her. Ice Spirit. First was Jotiana's wood spirit that could completely oppress Tang Wuling, and now Johanyo revealed a 1,000-year ice spirit. Similar to wood spirit, it was an elemental amplification soul skill. The difference between 100-year and 1,000-year was unfathomable, however, not to mention that this was actually her third soul skill. A giant ice wall erected in front of her the same moment she activated her third soul skill. The fireballs smashed into the wall and were extinguished effortlessly, but Tang Wuling crashed into it resolutely. He punched the wall with his golden dragon claw so hard that it embedded inside. Cracks ran along the surface, but the wall didn't shatter this time. Sharp shards of ice formed around Johanyo. She felt humiliated to think that a mere 10-year-old child had forced her to use her third soul skill. Strengthened by ice spirit, her icicles were now no less than 1 meter in length and infinitely colder and sharper than before. She smacked her palm on the ice wall in front of her. Tang Wuling felt his body tremble and shouted in alarm. He hastily circulated his soul power to defend himself, and in the next second the ice wall exploded, sending him flying backward. Tang Wuling had faced a 3-ring soul master before, but only now did he understand how dreadful a powerful 3-ring soul master was. Freezing air drilled into his body, his blood sluggish from the cold. Explosive energy ran along his veins. If it wasn't for his sturdier than normal body, he would have already lost consciousness. Shards from the ice wall shot toward him while icicles rained upon Douluo. When Douluo and Shishi saw that Tang Wuling was sent flying, they both cried out. While Shishi's was filled with astonishment, Douluo's was fueled with rage. An eerie glint flashed in Douluo's eyes before she disappeared in a silver flash, only to reappear next to Tang Wuling. The icicle shower hit nothing but air. This is... Johanyo froze for a moment. After all, she still lacked battle experience, and in that momentary pause, the icicles escaped her range of secondary manipulation. They continued onward unguided until they shattered against the arena's barrier so hard that it rippled. Chapter 224, Martial Soul Fusion Skill. Fuming with anger, Douluo's 2 soul rings lit up. She clasped her hands together in front of her chest, and a fireball blazed into existence before her. Green ribbons of light swirled around it and merged together as Douluo's hands moved in circles. Fire and wind were complementary. Her wind fed the fire until it turned into a giant flaming tornado. This firestorm was only 1 meter in height, but as elementalists themselves, the Dou sisters could sense the surrounding wind and fire elements converging into the tornado. It quickly grew, and a few seconds later, its height already exceeded 2 meters. She comprehends the element's heart. The always smiling Jotiana finally lost her composure as she cried out in alarm. This element's heart was only significant to elemental-type soul masters. If they wanted to gain true power, then they had to understand the heart of the element they controlled. An element's heart was its essence, and as long as one grasped it, not only could one draw upon the power within themselves, they could also tap into the elemental power found in the atmosphere. It was an ability that allowed one's strength to reach beyond their soul power. The strong and the weak were separated by whether one had comprehended the element's heart. Naturally, if one called upon power beyond one's control, it could possibly devour one instead, and it was for this reason that spiritual power was absolutely crucial to elemental-type soul masters. The better control one had, the less likely one would be devoured by one's own element. In a sense, Johanyo's ice spirit and Jotiana's wood spirit both enhanced their control over the elements. However, they were still a long way away from understanding the element's heart. The only way it was possible for Douluo's whirlwind of fire to continue growing when she clearly hadn't fed its soul power was if she had comprehended the element's hearts and summoned the surrounding elemental power to feed the firestorm. Just how old is she? How can she already understand the element's heart? And 2 of them at that. This is unbelievable. Quick. We need to act. Johanyo was the first to recover from her shock. They both knew just how terrifying the might of the element's heart was. If she happened to lose control, then calamity would befall everyone on the stage. No one knew whether Douluo could control it. In most instances, a soul master who has comprehended the element's heart would sever their connection with the elemental energy just before they reached the limit of their control to avoid being devoured. But Douluo was only 10 years old. They didn't dare gamble with her. Johanyo extended her right hand while Jotiana reached out with her left hand. The moment the 2 grasped hands, a change came over them. An azure figure twinkled behind Johanyo while an emerald figure descended behind Jotiana and embraced them. In that instant, their aura of power soared to astonishing heights. At the same time, all of the spectators in the boxes stood up in alarm. This included Box 7's Wu Zhangkong and Shen Yi, and Box 1's Long Huanshan and Zhang Senpeng. Even though they were not in the same boxes, invariably, all of them were stunned beyond words. No one had high expectations for this 3 versus 3 match originally, but it now proved to be too shocking for anyone to comprehend. Wu Zhangkong had known that Tang Wuling and the others' opponents were incredibly powerful the moment the match started. In addition to having 2 3-ring soul masters, the Sealand team's combat experience was leaps and bounds ahead of any of their previous opponents. Moreover, there were 2 elemental-type soul masters in that team. Tang Wuling's tactics proved effective as the match progressed. It was crucial that Shishi kept Wang Dongqi occupied. Otherwise, they would have to deal with a powerful assault-type soul master whose Thunderflash sword had some control properties. In that situation, the 2 elemental-type soul masters would battle with their peak performance. What truly left Wu Zhangkong speechless, however, was how arrogant Tang Wuling was. He hadn't let Douluo act in the beginning in order to conserve her strength, and it wasn't until he was suppressed that he had called her in. They had underestimated Johanyo's strength, but Douluo's comprehension of the elements hearted both Wu Zhangkong and Shen Yi gaping. Shen Yi nearly demanded Wu Zhangkong to hand Douluo over to her right then and there. Any elemental-type soul master who understood the element's heart was a rarely found genius. Not to mention the number of different elements Douluo wielded. Even if her soul skills couldn't affect an element directly, it didn't matter since she comprehended the element's heart. She had definitely grasped the heart of both fire and wind, making her a once-in-a-lifetime genius. However, their surprise didn't end there. Johanyo, backed into a corner by the firestorm, revealed her trump card. A bizarre scene unfolded behind them when she and her sister joined hands, and all the powerful spectating experts quickly realized what this was. The rarest and most powerful ability in the world of soul masters, a martial soul fusion skill. Moreover, it was a dual-element soul fusion skill. Even at a federal level tournament, this would still be an astonishing sight. Yet, to think it appeared in the Sky Alliance tournament's junior division's 3-man event, a match that everyone expected to be lackluster. Meanwhile, Long Huanshan finally understood why Zhang Senpeng was so confident in his request. No wonder he's so self-assured. Disregarding the soul fusion skill's effects, the very fact that the 2 sisters could use this skill made them worthy of the 2 inner court examination quotas. Even if Sky City ruled like a tyrant, it wouldn't dare overlook such talent. After all, the prosperity of the Sky Alliance as a whole was still in their interests. If these 2 sisters made it into Shrek's inner court, then the Sky Alliance would be showered with honor and glory, although the Sealand Academy would benefit the most from this as they would directly receive an inner court examination quota in the future. The Sky Alliance's status would also rise within the world of soul masters. At that same time, Long Huanshan took note of the 3 kids from East Academy. These brats are so tough, even though they might not have a soul fusion skill, that girl's elemental control is spectacular. Is that growing tornado really the work of a 2-ring soul master? Zhang Senpeng stared wide-eyed. It's too early to reveal your soul fusion skill. Although he was confident that his team would win the championship, he was still amazed by the EC team's ability. He had originally thought Tang Wuling was the strongest on the team, but now he knew that it was Douluo. On the stage, Johanyo and Jotiana began to sparkle as if the 2 were spirits blossoming with radiance, plunging their surroundings into a world of cold. Chapter 225, Forest of Ice. Blue and green lights interweaved together to form a blanket of ice gold mist that spread across the arena, overwhelming the fire and wind element in air and slowing the firestorm's growth. Douluo's expression darkened. A soul fusion skill was beyond her expectations. In the next instant, a white radiance appeared in front of her before revealing a giant tree. Its icy blue body seemingly condensed of ice yet bursting with vitality. It unfolded right in the center of the firestorm and the 2 collided together, generating waves of energy that rippled through the air. Though the blazing tornado shredded the leaves from the swaying tree, the fire also dissipated with every torn leaf. At a distance away, Wang Dongqi noticed this scene and immediately disengaged from Shishi to dash off the stage. She knew how powerful the Dou sisters' soul fusion skill was. She took a moment to look Shishi in the eye as she ran off and shout, "Hurry up and run!" Shishi also felt something was amiss and hurried after her. The 2 sisters were barely able to use this soul fusion skill with their current cultivation bases, but controlling it was another matter. Wang Dongqi understood this and knew to run. Douluo's complexion paled as the flaming tornado dispersed. To the side, the referee desperately yelled, "Stop!" But it was too late to stop it now. Bang! Box 7's glass screen shattered, and a white figure instantly flew toward the arena. A similar situation occurred in Box 1, but 2 figures flew out instead. Yet, no matter how fast they were, it was already too late to stop things. A heavy restraining power pressed down on Douluo as the chill gathered around her surroundings. The ground trembled, then split apart as a multitude of glacial blue trees sprouted from the earth. Soul fusion skill, forest of ice. In the moment that Douluo spent stunned at the sudden change, she was swept off her feet by a pair of powerful arms and soon found herself staring up at the sky. When she looked down, she discovered she was within Tang Wulin's embrace. Icicle after icicle pierced Tang Wulin. These were actually the branches of the trees, but his body was tough and they didn't penetrate through him to harm Douluo. Blood blossomed before her eyes, dyeing her vision with crimson. She gazed at Tang Wulin's face. Not a single trace of pain marred his features, only a gentle smile greeted her as his arms continued to firmly hold her away from danger. In that instant the forest of ice had appeared. Tang Wulin had slammed his claw at the ground with his claw and broken free of his restraints to lunge at Douluo and draw her into his embrace, shielding her with his body as he accepted the onslaught of icicles. No! An inhuman shriek of devastation tore out of Douluo's throat, her voice on the verge of shattering. 6 elemental lights wildly gathered around her: fire, water, earth, wind, light, and space. A trace of amazement filtered through Tang Wulin's eyes, but he had already lost feeling in his body. His body truly felt no pain, but when he saw Douluo like this, a sense of familiarity arose within him. Douluo's eyes blazed with fiery wrath, her thirst for blood, for death, rolling off her in waves. Douluo, don't. Tang Wulin's feeble voice made its way to her ear. Her body trembled as she regained herself. She grabbed Tang Wulin, disappearing in a flash of silver light the instant before the forest of ice reached its climax. Tree after tree burst from the ground, their number as large as the first 2 and each subsequent tree was smaller than the last. Although the trees were not as tall as the original 2, they still released a frigid, penetrating aura. The snow white figure was the first to land on the stage, but there was nothing to welcome him. Tang Wulin and Douluo had just teleported away a moment ago. Zhang Sanpeng was the second to arrive. Having moved a moment he noticed the sisters using forest of ice. This is bad. This is just a match. They can't even control the soul fusion skill yet. An accident is bound to happen. Unfortunately, he was a step too late. The soul fusion skill had completed in the end. The sisters collapsed onto the ground, their complexions pale as they gasped for breath. They had overspent themselves using the soul fusion skill. How could you 2 use a soul fusion skill? Zhang Sanpeng reprimanded. How are you doing? Are your bodies fine? The 2 sisters regretted their actions as soon as they unleashed the forest of ice. They realized they still lacked experience. When facing the blazing tornado, they had panicked and mistakenly chose to use their strongest ability. Guilt had plagued them when they saw Tang Wulin's and Douluo's wretched states. Is this how you teach your disciples? A cold voice stabbed into his back. Zhang Sanpeng spun around to face a handsome young man dressed in white robes and harboring a demonically cold aura. Who are you? Why is a youngster like you here? He was feeling jittery. As the president of Sealand Academy, he had to take responsibility for the trouble his disciples stirred up. He understood just how powerful the forest of ice was and considering the talent the ESC team had displayed at their age, he knew that the ESC Academy wouldn't let things go easily. Fine. Wu Zhangkong didn't bother to explain himself, but his eyes now glinted with a deep blue color. He took a step forward and his Skyfrost sword appeared in his hand. 6 soul rings rose underfoot, 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 2 black. White robes and a blue sword. He was as cold as the frozen heavens. Wind raged and howled as his sword slashed forward while the surrounding frigid air converged on his body. His movements seemed gentle but in that instant, the surrounding forest of ice disintegrated into fine powder. He pointed his Skyfrost sword forward. His 5th soul ring lit up, and a gigantic azure blade materialized in the air. A breath later, 9 swords hovered in the air and the entire stadium seemed to groan under his oppressive might. Even the spectators in the stands could feel the pure chill of those giant swords. Zhang Sanpeng's face transformed into the very picture of horrific shock the moment he saw Wu Zhangkong's 6 soul rings. Although he also had 6 soul rings, they were 2 yellow and 4 purple. He could not be more clear on how wide the gap was between him and a soul emperor with black soul rings. The 9 swords arrayed themselves to form a deadly will in the air. Without giving him time to argue, the will spun, aiming for Zhang Sanpeng. While Tang Wulin and Douluo's fates were unknown, Wu Zhangkong found himself acting upon his rage. His fury made him both sharper and colder than before. The very atmosphere around him seemed to freeze. Zhang Sanpeng was completely unable to explain himself under Wu Zhangkong's pressure, so he directly summoned his martial soul in defense. A pair of giant wings unfurled behind him, so majestic it took one's breath away. He raised his hands to the sky and called forth a ball of lightning and radiant light that struck the wheel array of swords spinning toward him. Bang! Although they were both soul emperors, this first clash held the difference between them. A violent boom resounded as the ball of lightning dispersed and the 9 swords continued onward as if nothing had obstructed them. They reached Zhang Sanpeng in the blink of an eye. Zhang Sanpeng knew that he was weaker than his opponent, but he had never imagined that the chasm would be so wide. An explosive cry rang out as he activated his 5th soul skill and a bird of lightning flew out to meet the wheel of ice. His martial soul was the Thunderpeng and was definitely considered powerful. Unfortunately, his opponent was Wu Zhangkong of the frozen heavens. This was a furious Wu Zhangkong. Off stage. In another flash of silver, Douluo appeared with Tang Wulin in her arms. His body was riddled with holes, most concentrated around his upper body and his right thigh. For an ordinary person, these wounds were definitely fatal. Douluo gritted her teeth as she tightly hugged Tang Wulin, a golden light suddenly bursting from her body and enveloping the 2 of them. A few moments later it quickly transformed into a cocoon of light, cutting them off from the outside world. Chapter 226. Powerful. A draconic roar blasted through the air. The moment the lightning bird met with the wheel of swords, an azure dragon's form manifested. Its figure complemented that of the blue lightning bird as the 2 acted in concert. Long Huanshan arrived at Zhang Sanpeng's side. Although the 2 were rivals, they were still old friends. It was natural to assist one another in times of crisis. During the event, an ear-piercing alarm thundered through the background. Considering the scale of the Sky Sea Alliance tournament, few would dare cause a ruckus and pit themselves against the entire Sky Sea Alliance. 9 booms rumbled in succession, each followed by an engulfing wave of frost spreading out to all 4 corners of the stadium. The remaining spectators shivered in this cold. For a hairbreadth of a moment, a strange luster gripped the sky, elemental energy fluctuating chaotically in the stadium. So powerful. All of the spectators were dumbstruck as they watched the scene unfold. This was a clash between 3 powerhouses, each with 6 rings. Calling it incredible would be an understatement. Wu Zhangkong stood steadfast as he observed the clash before him with calm eyes. He was unmoved as the elemental shockwaves sent his robes billowing. Long Huanshan and Zhang Sanpeng both retreated 10 steps, their expressions as dark as stormy skies. While the former was slightly pale, traces of blood painted the latter's mouth red. Long Huanshan roared in indignation. Where did you come from? How dare you cause trouble at the Sky Sea Alliance tournament? Wu Zhangkong stared at them without speaking a word, his gaze cold enough to freeze. The Skyfrost sword shined brilliantly in his hands while a ferocious aura exploded from his form. All 6 of his soul rings lit up. Although the 3 soul masters each had 6 rings, Long Huanshan and Zhang Sanpeng felt suppressed with Wu Zhangkong pacing against them. Their bodies stiffened, their soul power circulation became erratic. The 2 were overwhelmed with horror. Wu Zhangkong had yet to reach 30 years of age, yet he had 2 black soul rings. Their expressions soured at the thought of battling him. 2 people had been paying attention to this match since the start. Shu Lizzie and Yi Xinglan. Shu Lizzie's voice wavered with anxiety. Tang Wulin should be fine, right? Yeah, he's fine. Big Sis England, he's fine, right? Yi Xinglan's eyes were dull. She had come to watch Class Zero's match today in order to scout out Douluo in preparation for their promised battle. After all, only by knowing both oneself and one's enemy could one emerge victorious. However, she had never expected the battle to play out this way. As a spectator, she had been able to see Tang Wulin shield Douluo in the final moments of the Forest of Ice, with his own body nonetheless. He never released her even as the branches penetrated him. That scene touched her heart. They were young boys and girls, so such pure actions in that time of crisis moved her easily. In that instant, all her grudges against Tang Wulin were vanquished, his position elevating in her heart. This was the first time she had seen someone sacrificing so much for another. His body was riddled with holes. Any of those injuries could be fatal. He was also wounded severely in our battle a few days ago. Maybe he is Yi Xinglin didn't answer Xu Lizzie. She herself didn't know what sort of answer to give. She sighed within her heart. There was nothing that she could do. That man with the blue sword should be his teacher. Wu Zhangkong did not press his assault. While utilizing his domineering aura to stifle Long Huanshan and Zhang Zhenpeng, he descended to Tang Wuling and Gu Yue's side. He examined their state, a frown soon crossing his face. Life emanated from the golden cocoon. He could not determine what was happening within, but Wu Zhangkong could sense two life forces, proof that the two survived intact. All of a sudden, giant figures swooped down from the sky. Upon sight of these figures, Long Huanshan let out a breath of relief. She looked up at the new arrivals, shock spreading gradually across his face. A squadron of 20 mechas, each 10 meters in height, appeared. The lead mecha was painted a regal purple, its entire body emanating strength. At its posterior trailed 4 yellow mechas, with 15 white ones following behind those. Despite the similar size of all the mechas, the energy fluctuations they emitted were of entirely different scales. The combined strengths of the mechas at the rear couldn't hold a candle to the purple one's might. Mechas were classified the same way as soul rings and spirit souls are. White mechas were the most basic. As such, they were used for training. They had limited movement capabilities coupled with minimal energy pool, giving rise to short operation times. Furthermore, they could not be operated with soul power or spirit souls, and were controlled manually. These units filled the ranks of city guards. They were essential for maintaining public order, and even ordinary people could handle them. The military standard model were yellow mechas. Its mobility surpassed the white model and it had a decent energy pool to operate on. It could run on both energy and soul power, with the option to utilize spirit souls. Like white mechas, they were also controlled by manually. Near the top of the hierarchy were the high performance and custom purple mechas. These were designed and crafted with the future pilot's martial soul in mind. Therefore, its mobility was incredible. The mecha more in tune with its pilot. At this level, the fusion between the mecha and the martial soul went deep. For these reasons, this model was known as a personal mecha. That being said, even at this level, they were operated manually. Black mechas were also called super mechas and were in a league of their own. They were made of special materials, had unique designs, and were crafted through difficult methods. At this level, the fusion between the spirit soul and the mecha was perfect. Such an integration created an illusion as though the mecha was an extension of one's body. Each super mecha was paired with a single pilot. If the pilot died, then the mecha would forever stay unoperated. In order to pilot a super mecha, one needed to be at least a soul emperor. Their spiritual power must also be at the Spritzy realm. These mechas could be controlled by the mind to an extent, but they required more skill to operate. Finally, red mechas were the cream of the crop, considered to be at the divine level. For its successful creation, these mechas had to be crafted personally. Apart from using top-grade materials forged by a first-rate blacksmith, one's essence and martial soul had to fuse with the materials perfectly. The result was an existence that could be deemed one thing, alive. A mecha could only be judged as of the divine level if it possessed a degree of sentience. With such a godly machine, the spirit soul could dissolve into it practically. Only with a red mecha could a mecha pilot fight on equal terms with the battle armor master. However, creating a red mecha was as difficult as crafting battle armor. Thus, red mechas were rarer than battle armor masters. Naturally, when facing a powerful battle armor master, not even a red mecha could close the gap. The 20 mechas surrounded Wu Zhangkong. The white mechas were all equipped with 3-meter-long soul cannons, aimed right at his body. The purple mecha flew over to him. Beside matching a soul emperor in combat strength, a purple mecha also had a larger energy reserve. One of these machines was more than enough to suppress a soul emperor. Seeing the arrival of these mechas, Long Huanshan was convinced that the situation would be brought under control. Yet, not everyone was of the same opinion. Shen Yu, who had arrived but chose to stay off stage, was a prime example. Chapter 227, Sky Ice Battle Armor. Gazing at the levitating Wu Zhangkong, Shen Yu couldn't help but mutter to herself, "Those fools. Now they're just provoking him. Don't they know that the calmer a person is, the more terrifying their wrath?" In that instant, Wu Zhangkong raised his head, sweeping his eyes over his Skyfrost sword as he spit out 2 words: Sky, Ice. Hearing those 2 words, Shen Yu trembled even as her eyes widened. Yet, in their evergreen depths sparked a trace of excitement. It had been ages since she had last seen Wu Zhangkong, and even longer since she had witnessed Sky Ice. A bright radiance enveloped Wu Zhangkong's body as his Skyfrost sword also flashed with a brilliant light and instantly fused with his body. The expressions of the surrounding mecha pilots changed when they saw their target vanish. "He's over there," someone shouted, and they all looked to the sky. Wu Zhangkong had ascended higher. His classic white robes were gone. Instead, shining white lights glowed from his forehead, shoulders, chest, elbows, wrists, hands, hips, knees, and feet. Silver threads woven through the lights formed an intricate design, drawing strength to him, and it soon overflowed into his aura. A sky blue crystal droplet materialized from the radiance around his forehead, followed by a band of white that circled his head as the droplet support. 5 snowflake-like tips rose from the top of the band to form a crown, while the elegant silver thread design solidified until it exuded an aura of magnificence. 2 white metal bands ran down from either side of the crown past his ears to cradle his cheeks, their very appearance like streams of cold air. The rest of his armor, starting from his neck, manifested after that. Wu Zhangkong was clad in a sparkling suit of armor at the end of the transformation. His attire dyed in a brilliant white and highlighted with silver. His body was bathed in luminescence, his eyes the most sparkling of sapphires. The 6 soul rings were absorbed into his armor, and in his hands appeared a sword about 1.5 meters in length. This was the Sky Ice Skyfrost sword. Both the hilt and the blade were pure white. However, while the hilt's tip resembled a snowflake, the blade's edge flaunted a crystalline blue hue. Although Wu Zhangkong's looks were originally on another level, now that he wore brilliant armor that accentuated his features, he transformed into a graceful white knight. Shen Yu's eyes sparkled as she took in his splendor. Now this is the real him. Sky Ice Wu Zhangkong is back. Battle armor. Long Huanshan and Zhang Zhenpeng cried out in unison. At this realization, the mechas that were about to attack froze suddenly. Some of the lesser white mechas even began to lay down their cannons. A battle armor master. He's actually a battle armor master. If Tang Wuling was conscious then, he would definitely be the most excited person around. He had always been yearning to see battle armor in action. As Wu Zhangkong pointed his sword downward, his aura continued to surge with power. It had been ages since he last spoke the 2 words Sky Ice. Bitter pain erupted from within the depths of his deep blue eyes. Just like mechas, battle armors had their own rankings. However, this particular ranking system was strange. At its core, a suit of battle armor was similar to a super mecha. This was because both were forged personally by a soul master and acted as an extension of and became a major component of the user's strength. A battle armor master would be 20 soul ranks stronger than any soul master of the same soul power rank. If a soul master had 5 rings and equipped a 1-word battle armor, his strength would be equivalent to that of a 7-ring soul master. 2-word battle armor master could match a soul master with 8 rings, and so forth. Battle armor was divided into 4 levels. With each increase in level, another word would be added to the battle armor's name. 1-word battle armor, every piece of armor was made of 1,000 refined metal and required 5 rings minimum to use. 2-word battle armor, every piece of armor was made of spirit refined metal and required 6 rings minimum to use. 3-word battle armor, every piece of armor was made of soul refined metal and required 7 rings minimum to use. 4-word battle armor, every piece of armor was made of divine refined metal and required 9 rings minimum to use. When Wu Zhangkong was a 1-word battle armor master, he named his battle armor Ice. It was customary to add the name of one's battle armor to one's own. Therefore, he was called Ice Wu Zhangkong in the world of soul masters at that period of his life. Later on, he expended much time and effort to upgrade his battle armor to 2-word. After his success, he stitched on the word Sky from his Skyfrost sword, amending his battle armor's name to Sky Ice. Thus, he became Sky Ice Wu Zhangkong. The sky originated from his Skyfrost sword while the ice came from the name of his beloved. He did not use his battle armor lightly. He feared the intense longing for her that would come with it. Though he wished to follow her into the next life, he could not until he fulfilled their promise. Battle armor masters held a supreme position throughout the entire continent. Even government officials would withdraw from any disputes involving one of them. In the end, they would be forced to call in another battle armor master aligned with the government to settle the problem. Indeed, only a battle armor master could face another battle armor master. On the Douluo continent, they were the most regal of existences. The reason Shrek Academy still held on to so much power and influence was precisely because it possessed the strongest battle armor master force. Mecha pilots couldn't hope to compare with them. Even if there was a rarely seen black mecha, its pilot would still treat Wu Zhangkong with the utmost utmost courtesy. Now equipped with sky ice, Wu Zhangkong's strength soared to match that of an 8-ringed expert. You have harmed my disciple. If he sustains any lasting wounds, then you will pay with your life. Wu Zhangkong's icy voice was quiet, but each word was clear to everyone present. He directed a domineering gaze at Zhang Sanpeng. His target wasn't the two Zhou sisters. They were children after all. No, defeat without teaching was the father's fault. To teach without severity was the teacher's laziness. The one he begrudged was their teacher. When Zhang Sanpeng had questioned him in that belittling manner, his fury had been fanned like a rising flame. Zhang Sanpeng paled in front of Wu Zhangkong. A two-word battle armor master. He's actually a two-word battle armor master. Disregarding Zhang Sanpeng, there wasn't a single person in Sealand City that would dare offend someone of this stature. Battle armor masters were the most powerful and unwavering of soul masters. Compared to building a mecha, it was 10 times harder to craft a battle armor of the same level. Considering how young Wu Zhangkong was, and the fact that he was already a two-word battle armor master, his prospects were boundless. It was likely he would one day stand at the continent's summit. A sudden tremble ran through Wu Zhangkong's body. His sword began to buzz as his battle armor erupted with silvery light all of a sudden. It was dazzling even in the bright of day. All of the mecha's book defensive maneuvers while Long Huanshan and Zhang Sanpeng were simply overwhelmed with shock. Is he actually attacking? In the blink of an eye, Shen Yi ascended into the skies. Viridian wafts floated around her while strands of white hair floated behind. The green strings of air soon transformed into symbols branding her body, then metamorphosed into light similar to those that had covered Wu Zhangkong. The only difference was their color. These spots of radiance were green. A halo of emerald light spiraled around her body, like a vine climbing a pole. A breath later, she was clad in green armor with Viridian highlights. It was another battle armor. There were clear differences between the two battle armors. Whereas Wu Zhangkong's was sleek, hers was embedded with leaves that spun outward. Wu Zhangkong's battle armor's folds were short, but Shen Yi's skirt reached past her thighs. It exuded a more feminine allure. In her hand sat a moss-toned whip. An emerald bead bursting with vitality was embedded at the tip. The entire set of armor breathed with life, dispelling the chill in the stadium instantly. Zhangkong, stop. Shen Yi ordered. Despite the fact that battle armor masters were supreme existences, they still had their own hierarchy. One would be disciplined if one blundered. In some aspects, the greater one's strength, the greater the restrictions. Chapter 228, Advancing to Soul Sage. Shen Yi was about to restrain Wu Zhangkong, but after realizing something, she paused in midair. She thrusted out her arms, unleashing a tyrannical aura that rendered all the present mecha pilots and soul masters motionless. As the silver halation around Wu Zhangkong receded into his body, a black soul ring appeared underneath him. It expanded, fusing swiftly with his battle armor. A look of helplessness crossed her face. She was at a loss for words. I can't believe this guy. He just suddenly had a breakthrough. Wu Zhangkong was no longer a soul emperor, but a soul sage. Congratulations, Zhangkong. Shen Yi flew over to his side carrying these heartfelt words. Despite his breakthrough, he wore an expression devoid of joy. In that instant, he noticed that the golden cocoon of light, which encased his two disciples, was dimming. He dropped down in a flash, landing right beside them. Finally, the two's forms grew clear. Yu Yue sat on the ground, eyes closed and pale-faced as if she was drained of blood. Only the barest whispers of life lingered on her. Tang Wulin was still soaked in blood, but the enormous wounds covering him like a gruesome blanket were already healed. While his breath and pulse were weak, they both persisted at a steady pace. Wow. These brats sure know how to surprise people. Shen Yi muttered to herself. With a wave of a hand, her body lit up with a green glow. Two lights that resembled leafy plants flew toward Tang Wulin and Yu Yue, merging with the children. Wu Zhangkong's tension eased once he saw that his two disciples were fine. Tilting up his head, he met Shen Yi's gaze. You specialize in treatment. How are they right now? She directed a strange look at him. The boy was heavily wounded and his organs were crushed. A fatal injury for an ordinary person. But as you can see, his heart wasn't touched. However, he took the full brunt of a soul fusion skill and should by all means be dead now. Somehow, he's still clinging on to life tenaciously. That's the first thing that I can't make sense of. The next is this girl. She's truly brave. She used her life's light to heal him. Light is the purest and brightest element. After all, it is filled with life at its core. The greatest source of vitality one can draw upon is one's life's light. And this girl had mustered hers. She ignited her own life force in order to heal the boy. His wounds and damaged organs have already been restored. You're really living up to Shrek's name by raising these little monsters. Wu Zhangkong furrowed his brows. Just tell me, will this affect them in the future? Shen Yi said, I don't know. I'll have to examine them once they've recovered fully. Since they have overexerted themselves, it will take some time. How about this? I'll go back with you and look after these two children until they're healed. Thank you. Wu Zhangkong nodded appreciatively. He took Tang Wuling into his arms, treating him as a fragile object. A layer of azure light radiated from his sky ice battle armor, sheltering them from the outside world. After gesturing with his head at Shishi and Xu Xiaoan, he left with large strides. Shen Yi picked up Yu Yue and followed. As they exited the stadium, they paid no mind to the spectators or the two academy presidents, Long Huanshan and Zhang Sanpeng. Even so, no one dared to obstruct them. Away from the arena, Mu Chen stood with his hands folded behind his back, dark clouds practically completing his image. Duan-sun stood at his side. Considering his status as the president of East East Blacksmiths Association, he shouldn't have made an appearance. His place was in the boxes with Duan-sun. However, when he had seen Tang Wuling receiving such grievous injuries, it felt like a dagger stabbing into his heart. His martial soul did not excel in speed and as such, he had lagged behind Wu Zhangkong. Duan-sun had restrained him, warning him not to act impulsively. Soon after, Wu Zhangkong displayed his godly might much to Mu Chen's delight. It was also his first time seeing how formidable Tang Wuling's soulmaster teacher was. Although Mu Chen was powerful in his own right, he hadn't expected this unassuming school teacher to exceed him. With Wu Zhangkong's appearance, Mu Chen no longer felt the need to act. Sure enough, Wu Zhangkong revealed his battle armor, suppressing everyone with unadulterated power. In the end, the threat of his might was enough, and he left with Tang Wuling in his arms as if he was taking a stroll. From such a display, Mu Chen knew that Tang Wuling's safety was preserved. Teacher, let's go take a look, Mu Chen said. Duan-sun's eyes didn't leave Shen Yi as he said, no matter what the situation is, don't act impetuously. The child should be relatively fine. Otherwise, there's no way that battle armor master would leave things like this. Your disciple sure is great. He actually has a battle armor master for a teacher. Mu Chen smiled bitterly. This is the first time I've seen his teacher too. I didn't expect it would be under such circumstances. I hope none of the injuries are permanent. A sigh escaped Duan-sun's lips. Hurry up and go. If you need anything, just tell me. Tang Wuling felt as if a deep sleep was calling out to him, tempting him to lie in its embrace. Regaining consciousness, he opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Yu Yue's tear-stricken face. Following that, a boundless golden light enveloped them like a cocoon. His body still felt cold and numb after being impaled by numerous icicles. The chill had nearly frozen his blood over. The only thing that stood in between him and death was his throbbing heart. Shielding Yu Yue with his body had been instinctual. In spite of that, during the event his mind had operated at max speed. He had activated the purple demon eyes, barely able to avoid the incoming icicles stabbing his heart. The chilling numbness that engulfed his body allowed him to disregard the damage he had sustained. Yet, he had felt his life slipping away, his mind growing dim. Swathed in that golden world, the cold receded bit by bit, replaced with a pleasant warmth. Blanketed in this comfortable feeling, he lost consciousness. It's been 3 days. 3 whole days. Wu Zhangkong sat by the bedside, watching his two sleeping disciples. Both had yet to awake and had been sleeping soundly the entire time. Although their complexions were still pale, their breathing and heartbeats had improved. Shen Yi determined that there would be no lasting effects and cleared them for natural recovery. Afterward, she departed. There were still many things to attend to at Shrek Academy. Tarrying for so long was already pushing the limit. According to Shen Yi, Tang Wuling's self-healing ability was extraordinary. Despite receiving such grave injuries, his damaged viscera were healed by life's curing light. He could now leave it to his body to do the rest. Surviving was certain for him. That being said, it was unknown whether his cultivation would be affected. Only time would tell. Wu Zhangkong, however, was confident in his disciple. He still recalled the root of Tang Wuling's unfathomable healing ability, his bloodline. Chapter 229, Time Flies. Although Sky Sea Alliance's government did not investigate the prior incident, it also refrained from issuing an apology. Everything was swept under the rug. With 2 of its main members incapacitated, Class 0 could no longer compete in the tournament. MN. Wu Zhangkong was roused by a hushed groan. He turned to the source of the noise without skipping a beat. Yu Yue struggled to open her eyes. Wuling. The first word that tumbled from her lips was his name, albeit in a feeble manner. Wu Zhangkong rushed to her side and pinched the veins on Tang Wuling's wrists. He's fine. He's right beside you. You're still weak right now. Just rest. Teacher Wu, managing to force open her eyelids, Gu Yue aimed her gaze at Wu Zhangkong. Her eyes were red with worry. She turned to her side to check on Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling slept like a baby, free of the slightest inkling of pain. He's tired, Gu Yue muttered to herself as she yielded to the call of slumber. Wu Zhangkong stared at the two blankly, brows knitted ever so slightly. Gu Yue's words had stirred his mind. Ever since he took Tang Wuling as a student, it struck him that this disciple was the most hardworking of the batch. Wu Zhangkong often saw him jogging at the break of dawn, even before the roosters crow. Despite his burdens and diligence toward cultivation, not once did Tang Wuling complain. Back in the Spirit Ascension platform, a lapse in his judgment had nearly triggered a cultivation deviation. Then there was the tournament from several days ago when he was heavily injured but recovered in a single day. He then tackled another challenge which left him in his current state. I've been too demanding of him. He has been too hard on himself as well. He's painfully aware of how much talent he lacks compared to Gu Yue, Shishi, and Xu Xiaoan. This is what drives him forward. This is why he invests twice as much effort as all of them combined. He's fatigued in both body and mind. I've been overlooking that. Wu Zhangkong stood up and walked over to Tang Wuling's bed. Perhaps some adjustments are in order. At the very least, I will have to make some short-term revisions. They are still children after all. Mu Chen had made a visit 3 days before with the purpose of confirming Tang Wuling's state. Only after ascertaining his well-being did he turn heel toward East City. Mu Chen's actions brought Wu Zhangkong to make a decision. Wuling can't go on like this. I must discuss his future with this president. As astounding as battle armor masters appearing in the tournament had seemed, in reality, it was merely a small episode. Without any follow-up, this hot piece of news sizzled away quickly. Thus, Class Zero's dazzling display was like a blossom from a night blooming cactus, the petals withering away before dawn. Due to their amazing results in the first half of the round-robin tournament, they reached the top 16. However, that was as far as they could go. It was not as if they could continue to participate. When Long Huachan and Zhang Sanpeng pressed for more information on Class Zero, East Sea Academy had already sealed off all relevant information, leaving the two clueless. Class Zero had disappeared, not only from the tournament, but from the East Sea Academy itself. None of the students there ever heard from or saw them again. 3 years later in East Sea City, at East Sea Seoul Technology Park, two figures zipped through the park side by side, not a bit uncertain of the path to their destination. Once the figure on the left confirmed that they weren't being tracked, he picked up his pace and dashed off in a blur. The other youth stepped up his pace to keep up. Damn. If this continues, I won't know if it's you or me who is the agility type soul master here. Can you slow down a bit? The youth on the right said helplessly. While they appeared to be 14 years old, they towered over their peers. They both stood above 170 centimeters, their bodies toned and well-proportioned. Slender muscles rippled as they ran, faintly visible beneath their clothes. Despite the swift pace, their expressions showed no sign of exhaustion. They had no problem maintaining the speed. The teen on the left smiled. Of course you excel in explosive sprints, but you're no good at long distance. How am I no good? The one on the right was disgruntled. His partner laughed. Then let's have a contest later. We'll run from East City all the way to Sky City. How about it? Rejected. He did not hesitate in his answer. I'm not bored enough to do that. So I heard you've got enough contribution points now. MN. It was too easy. I've got enough now, the youth on the left said, waving his arm dismissively. The two kept running deeper into the park, and soon arrived before a cobalt-colored building. Its exterior behaved like a lens, as if the glass panes were assembled specifically for this effect. The lens refracted light to produce a bizarrely beautiful scene. Light was refracted at every angle in a different way, resulting in a new view with every slight adjustment. The door, which was made of a similar material, was unguarded. The two placed their right hands atop it. A blue light scanned their hands as a lazy voice sounded. Eastie's little Wuling, Eastie's little Shishi. You two sure are hardworking. You're here again. Come on in. The two youths were precisely Tang Wuling and Shishi. In the past 3 years, they had matured substantially. Not only did they grow taller, their shoulders were now broader as well. Tang Wuling's eyes were as large as ever, which, together with his increased height, served to accentuate his already handsome appearance. Actually, Shishi wasn't too lacking in the looks department himself. After all these years of intimacy with Tang Wuling, he no longer kept a cold demeanor and now seemed like a mischievous teen. Indeed, he was less attractive than Tang Wuling, and his eyes were not as large, but his gaze was lively and brimming with energy. Hello, Uncle Cow. Tang Wuling and Shishi greeted respectfully before entering. Undoubtedly, this was East Sea City's Tang Sect branch. They passed through the familiar metal passageway, hopped on a special elevator, and soon arrived before a certain room. Once more, a large screen appeared before them to scan their handprints. Eyes blazing, Tang Wuling laid his palm on the screen. An electronic voice said, verifying identity. The screen flashed with rows of data pertaining to Tang Wuling. Identity confirmed. Outer sect disciple Tang Wuling. 13 years, 5 months, and 6 days old. Total contribution points, 14,670. Available contribution points, 7,863. Class 4 outer sect associate. Martial soul, blue silver grass. Soul power rank, 28. Control type soul master. Soul Brand Master. Shishi followed suit, placing his palm on the other side of the screen. His data appeared a moment later. Identity confirmed. Outer sect disciple Shishi. 13 years, 4 months, and 1 day old. Total contribution points, 1,554. Available contribution points, 1,554. Class 3 outer sect associate. Martial soul. Light dragon dagger. Shadow dragon dagger. Soul power rank, 33. Agility type soul master. Soul Elder. Shishi broke down in defeat when he saw his contribution points. His twin martial souls and soul-free soul rings allowed him to only lag behind Tang Wuling by 1 class. He had no way of mirroring that amount of contribution points. He chose mega crafting as his secondary profession and was merely a rookie first-rank mega craftsman. The 1,000 or so points he managed to scrape together stemmed from contributing information acquired from his family, from doing odd jobs, and by collecting resources for the sect, among others. On the other hand, the entirety of Tang Wuling's points came from forging. In these few years, he had managed to climb to the peak of the 4th rank, not letting the restraints on his soul power hinder his drive for practicing blacksmithing. On the contrary, it spurred him on. He had accomplished the goal he had set for himself in the past. First grade 1,000 refining any metal available to him was now a piece of cake. By relying on his high blacksmithing level, Tang Wuling accrued an incredible amount of contribution points, leading to his promotion to a class 4 associate. The Tang sect was split into the inner and outer sects. The outer sect had 9 classes, all given the title of associate. The inner sect was divided into 5 halls: the Power Hall, Speed Hall, Defense Hall, Enforcement Hall, and Elder Hall. Moreover, the outer sect took on the form of a company called the Dazzling Tang Sect Corporation. A class 4 associate would then be the equivalent of a company manager, while a class 5 associate would take on the role of a department director. The Tang sect was very strict when it came to recruiting disciples. Every single candidate needed to have a field they specialized in, as well as a recommendation from an outer sect associate of class 6 or above. One could only take the entrance exam after fulfilling these requirements. Chapter 230, Spirit Item Exchange. Because of Wu Zhangkong's identity as both a soul sage and a two-word battle armor master, the doors to the inner sect opened for him. The inner sect cared about neither experience nor origin, only strength and contributions mattered. Once one fulfilled both requirements, one would be led into the illustrious inner sect. Now that he was a part of the inner sect, he could learn the rest of the Tang sect's secret arts and gained access to more of the sect's resources. Mission turn in, Tang Wuling said to the screen before retrieving several chunks of metal in a flash of light. These materials were his mission's objective. Currently, he was accepting missions from both the Blacksmiths Association and the Tang sect. The tasks completed for the association gave him money. On the other hand, he accrued contribution points from the Tang sect. Apart from its secret arts, the Tang sect offered various products exclusive to the sect. It was for these products that Tang Wuling was exchanging his points. 3 pieces of first grade 1,000 refined metal, 600 points. Available contribution points, 8,463. The electronic voice announced his new total. Tang Wuling's eyes twinkled with excitement as he tapped the screen a few times, navigating to a list of spirit items. Ignoring the rest of the inventory, he scrolled down until he found the particular ingredient he wanted. 1,000-year land dragon tendon, a legendary spirit medicine that can refine a soul master's physique without any side effects. Perfect condition. Price, 3,900 contribution points. Tang Wuling did not hesitate to tap the purchase button before resuming his search. A moment later, he stopped looking. 1,000-year sea dragon marrow, a legendary spirit medicine that refines a soul master's body and strengthens their chi and blood without any side effects. Perfect condition. Price, 4,500 contribution points. Exchange. After securing the item, he let out a long sigh, his eyes glistening like clusters of stars. During his trip 3 years ago to Heaven Dou City with Wu Zhangkong, he had managed to buy 1,000-year dragon scale fruit. Afterward, he discovered that the 1,000-year land dragon tendon and sea dragon marrow were on the Tangsek's inventory. After hoarding his points, he was able to lay his hands on them. Now, he only needed a 1,000-year azure veined vine. Since he had yet to turn 14, he was in no rush to obtain the last item. He was confident that with his savings, he could acquire the precious ingredient at an auction or through some other means without an issue. Once the time came, his martial soul would evolve even further. However, he was left with a pitiful 603 contribution points after splurging. Just as Tang Wulin was about to log out, the electronic voice spoke. Tang Wulin, congratulations. You have surpassed 15,000 total contribution points and will now be promoted to Class 5. You can now enjoy even more benefits from the Tang sect, and the exchange list has been expanded. Class 5? Since he neither possessed twin souls like Shishi nor had more than 2 rings, he had not been promoted in a while. He had never expected to reach Class 5 before receiving his 3rd soul ring. Naturally, Tang Wulin understood how rare his situation was. A Class 5 associate enjoyed much higher privileges than a Class 4 associate. The pool of available missions was enlarged. The number of Tang sect arts currently open to him was increased. Generally speaking, Tang sect missions were not dangerous, rewarding few contribution points as a result. Despite this, the exchange rate of the goods they offered beat the markets by a long shot. Tang Wulin had accumulated a small fortune through the Blacksmiths Association and acquired these 2 spirit items thanks to his efforts these past 3 years. This much already satisfied him. He was a step away from finishing his preparations to break the 2nd seal. This was a beneficial occasion for him. The memory of his first unsealing was still fresh in his mind. Old Tang had informed him that after the 2nd seal, a nice surprise would be waiting for him. Now, he could wholeheartedly look forward to it. It was so close. Shishi also turned in a resource collection mission, but received a paltry 100 or so contribution points. Xiaoan has been cultivating a lot recently. She hasn't even done any missions, Tang Wulin said to Shishi. Xiaoan had passed the middle level test and joined the Tang sect a year after them. Due to the special properties of her Star Wheel staff, she had ascended the ranks with remarkable speed, becoming a Class 3 associate. The Tang sect's administration was relatively relaxed and did not force members to take on missions. The missions that awarded the most contribution points were also the most dangerous. Even so, Tang sect regulations forbade anyone under 16 from accepting life-threatening missions. It was the sect's way of protecting its fledgling members. Xiaoan's recent devotion to cultivation was fueled by her soul rank, which hovered over the peak of rank 29. She was itching to hit rank 30, a major milestone for soul masters. Such an event wasn't limited to acquiring an additional soul ring. One could also fuse with a 2nd spirit soul, improving one's power drastically. Are you going to accept another mission? Shishi asked. Tang Wulin shook his head. Aren't we about to head off to Shrek City? It's not a good time to take another mission. I'll consider it once we return. Shishi winked. Maybe we won't return at all. Tang Wulin smiled wryly. That would be awesome. The 2 left the Tang sect and ran back to East Academy. In reality, Class 0 had continued to exist the whole time, simply hidden from the public's eyes. The battle 3 years ago had brought Wu Zhangkong's name to fame, overshadowing his 4 spectacular disciples. He was a battle armor master. The fact that an intermediate academy had a battle armor master working as a teacher took the Spicy Alliance by storm. Therefore, hordes of students applied to East Academy. Class 0's lackluster results weren't given much thought apparently. The academy had wanted to transfer more students into Class 0 on several occasions, but Wu Zhangkong refused vehemently each time. Even the academy president, Wu Zhen, could not persuade him. After all, he was a 2-word battle armor master. The difference in status between the 2 was as great as night and day. Wu Zhen was already more than happy that Wu Zhangkong agreed to continue teaching. The office of East Academy's president. Teacher Wu, are you sure about this? Wu Zhen's brows were creased, his expression grave, and his gaze wavering. Wu Zhangkong said calmly, from the academy's perspective, raising outstanding students who achieve great things and drawing in more talented students are of the highest priority. We have already been nourishing Class 0 for 3.5 years. Don't you want them to contribute to the academy? Being admitted to that academy is a far better achievement than anything else. When the time comes, the academy can announce it to the public. Surely many will be drawn here. Wu Zhen frowned. Isn't it a bit too early? Wu Zhangkong shook his head. Shrek Academy only holds its entrance exams once every 3 years. They're already 13 years old. If they don't go now, they'll miss their only chance. Wu Zhen still couldn't yield. But didn't you come from Shrek Academy? Teacher Wu, in my opinion, you should be more than enough to teach them. Wu Zhangkong's eyes narrowed before he shook his head once more. I can to a degree, but only that much. They need to lay down a proper foundation in preparation for the future. Wu Zhen's heart skipped a beat. The future? Teacher Wu, in your opinion, how high can they reach? Without any doubt in his voice, Wu Zhangkong proclaimed, Battle Armor Master. Trembles gripped Wu Zhen, droplets of sweat bouncing from each hair as they descended his back. He understood the weight of those words. Sucking in a deep breath, he stood up. Fine. I only request one thing of you then, in the future, when the children are Battle Armor Masters, have them visit us and give a talk to our students. Thanks so much for watching this video.